Everybody, this is TJR. If this is your first time here, welcome to the channel. If not, welcome back. And I want to talk about Bob Dylan today. Bob Dylan, of course, one of the most revered artists in music history. A while back, I remember reading an interview with John Mellencamp some years ago, where he basically said that, rock and roll, that era is over now. And he said, 100 years from now, when they write the history books and they discuss the rock and roll era, he said, basically they're going to say, there was this band called the Beatles and there was this guy named Dylan. And the rest of us are just going to be footnotes. And I would say that most Dylan fans would agree with that, of course. But the truth is I've never really been any kind of a big Dylan fan, and yet I would agree with that too, because I can understand the legacy that he has and how well regarded he is by not just music fans of our generation, but also just by all the music artists, some of which I'm a big fan of, regard him. So even though I'm not personally that into the music, I have to respect the legacy. And I have to understand at least that much of it. This doesn't mean I've hated Dylan's music. It just means that it's never appealed to me in a big way. But that doesn't mean I haven't tried to understand the appeal. Over the decades, I have occasionally sat down and listened to a Dylan album and tried to see if I don't get it. And like I said, at the most, maybe a casual greatest hits fan, and that's it. Another music artist who I guess you could say I have similar feelings about is Bruce Springsteen. He's very highly regarded. Maybe not to the point of Bob Dylan, but he's probably pretty close, I would say. And yet, for me, he's been mostly just a greatest hits artist. I've liked some of his hits, but never gotten that into his music. Until recently, I received a copy of this album here from Vinyl Me Please, which is Nebraska. Vinyl Me Please is a record club membership that I subscribe to, and this was my selection of the month. And I thought, yeah, I don't know, I've heard of this album, but I've never listened to it. Let's go ahead and check it out. And this album just cut a hole right through me. It really startled me. I loved it from start to finish. I made a video about my experience with this, and I have been listening to it ever since. I still really love it. It's been the first Springsteen album that has really kind of made me go beyond the hits. I do intend to listen to some more Springsteen in the future, but I'm still enjoying this. But I will at some point probably check out another album and see what I think. So a month or so after getting this, Vinyl Me Please selection of the month was this Dylan album here, Blonde on Blonde. An album that, of course, I've heard about, and I thought, well, hey, maybe I'll have a similar experience as I did with Nebraska. And maybe this album will kind of turn on that light bulb. Open that doorway. And it's like, okay, I'm getting Dylan more now. Because I really do want to try to understand what everybody else is understanding. And I do want to be part of the club, in other words. I figure these guys have got to be really great to have such huge fan bases and to be so well regarded that I feel like I'm missing out. And I got this album, I listened to it, and I was hoping for the best. But I guess the best I could say was that I thought the band was really good. But the songs didn't really appeal to me in any great way. I'm still holding on to this, though, because I think I might revisit it again and see if I don't feel differently. So this brings me to the present day. And I've heard, of course, that Blood on the Tracks is one of Dylan's best albums. And it was on sale. I found it online. There was a flash sale for it. And I thought, okay, let's give him another chance. Let's pick this up. And yes, I know, I subscribe to a streaming service. I could just pull this up on streaming anytime. But to me, there is something about the act of purchasing the album, having it physically in your hand, looking at the liner notes while you listen, maybe reading the lyrics if you have them in, if they're part of the record package, and experiencing it, having made some investment in it. And I have to admit that finally there's a Dylan album that has reached into my soul and has affected me, just the way the Nebraska album by Springsteen did. I was completely, how shall I say, floored by this album. Now, I should mention that I was, of course, familiar with the album's opening track, Tangled Up In Blue. I, of course, had heard that before. That would have been one of those hit songs by Dylan that I liked. And however, though, the rest of the album, to me, was equally as good. Simple Twist of Fate, When You Go, Meet Me in the Morning, Shelter from the Storm. There is such a wonderful sense of melancholy and longing in these tracks. And you might say that these are kind of similar albums because they're both very acoustic based. This one more acoustic based than this one. But whereas this one really I felt this one was much darker and really took me into the stories of people who are in very dark places. This one kind of took me on little adventures. And there was a sense of being very youthful and seeing unlimited possibilities on the horizon when I listened to a lot of these songs. There was a sense of comfort to these songs. There was a sense of exploration and adventure. I would say this was a much more positive album. They're both good experiences, but this was a much more uplifting album in my opinion. And whereas this was a much darker and shadowy album. This was the film noir album, basically. But yeah, this was I would say this is more the coming of age movie experience in many respects. I understand that when this album came out, Dylan was kind of, in some circles, considered to be washed up. And this album really broke him wide open again to a huge audience. I guess he had been kind of on a little bit of a downward spiral career-wise. I could be wrong about this. Again, people understand, I'm not an expert on either of these two artists. If you hear that, that's just a plane going by or a helicopter going by. But ever since I picked this up about maybe a week ago, I have been listening to it off and on almost a daily basis and really just loving the songs on it, I am going to go back to this one now, maybe see if I don't hear this one with different ears. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but it's certainly worth a try. And, sometimes there are some artists whom I love so much that I have pretty much everything they've ever done, or a good portion of whatever they've done. There are some artists who maybe I really love just one album by them, maybe two, or a handful, but not compelled enough to just check out their whole catalog. The Rolling Stones, one of the biggest rock and roll bands ever, if not the biggest rock and roll band ever, was for a long time just a greatest hits band for me. I only owned one album, and that was it. And then I read a book about them and began to explore their catalog, the classic period from the late 60s up until the early 1980s. Then I later on, years and years later, got the Rolling Stones in mono set and listened to all of the early vintage stuff. As of the making of this video, I can count the number of Rolling Stones albums that I don't own and haven't listened to yet on one hand. There's less than 5 now. So I've gone from greatest hits fan to being a serious album fan. It took a while to get there, but I've gotten there. And that's life, you know, that's the musical journey. Music is a journey. Start walking, because you never know where it will lead. Always be open to possibilities. I honestly don't know if this is going to open the door to me to experience Dylan further, but I'm glad that I finally have found a Dylan album that I really can relate to, that I really feel speaks to me and makes me want to keep returning to it, versus just walking away going, okay, well, I guess that was good. And who knows? We'll see. Maybe this will be the only Dylan album I ever really like. I don't know. I have a brother who is huge into Dylan. He's listened to everything he's ever done. He'll oftentimes joke with me and say, it's Bob's world, we just live in it. And, you know, we're all different when it comes to music. I mean, like my buddy, Robert, whom I've done videos with, he is as huge into Springsteen as my older brother is into Dylan. And, you know, we're all different that way. We all hear things differently. But I am glad to have discovered this album. I've known about it. You know, I've known it for its title for a long time, and I've certainly known the opening track, Tangled Up in Blue, but never really experienced it till now. And very, very glad to have discovered this. It's a great album, beautiful album, and it just fills me with a wonderful sense of wide-eyed openness, a little bit of melancholy, but I think overall a very positive album. And anyways, though, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think of all this. Let me know if you've ever heard this album, what you think of it. Let me know if there's any other Dylan you think I might like. As always, if you like these videos, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. And I want to thank my Patreon supporters who do receive exclusive weekly videos not available on this channel. If you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, go to patreon.com/TJR the original. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And hope you all stay safe and healthy. Take care. Bye-bye.